Here we are with the woman from Willendorf, also referred to as the Venus of Willendorf. Oftentimes, I'll put in parentheses another title of the artwork, and that's because oftentimes these have multiple titles or interpretations or translations, and while the textbook refers to her as the woman from Willendorf, she's also referred to as the Venus of Willendorf. We'll get into that in a little bit. But before we understand this artwork, let's understand this format. This is how my lectures or lecture images will be presented to you. I'll always have the image, the title, which is going to be on the top there. If there's an artist with, obviously we don't have an artist for this. We don't know who made this. But if there's an artist, it'll be up there. The title, Woman of Willendorf, and then the date. Now you might be saying, but Ms. Cortez, you said we don't have to memorize dates. You don't, but I will keep the dates up there to give you a reference point. So if you want to know what came first, what came second, what came third, they're there for you. Just know that I'm not going to be testing you on those. And then you can see on the top corner, the left corner, I'm always going to put the period style. So if, as you're going through the lectures, you're getting confused, what period style is this? Always just look at the top left, and I'm always going to have the period style there for you. So the period style, and the thing that I might test you on, is calling this artwork prehistoric, or more specifically, Paleolithic. Do you get it? So, the artist, obviously we don't have that. The title. Parentheses for any kind of nickname or alternate title. Date, period style, artwork. All right? Okay. Now here we are looking at the Venus of Willendorf. Now what we see is a rock that has been accented with a few elements like this texture here in her hair and the defining of arms over these bulbous forms that we understand to be her breasts. She has this very full figure, these wide hips and this large belly, this indentation here of her belly button, and then we have the shape of her thick thighs that end here in the middle of her calves, and the artist, whoever he or she was, also defined the pubis area. Analysis of this rock has shown that the greater shape of this form was natural, and that the artist took the time to put in these more finishing details of the texture on the head and the arm. The belly button was already there, and the pubis had been defined. Now, you might be thinking, uh-oh, she lost her feet. No, the rock never had any extended elements to it. It never broke off to make this piece. So she was never intended to have legs. They always were meant to look like that. Now I keep on holding her like this. I'll get to that in terms of her scale, her size. The word Willendorf, where is this coming from? Okay, we got a woman from Willendorf. What is that, Miss Cortez? Well, archaeologists found her at a site near the Austrian town of Willendorf. So when we talk about her, we're talking about her as an area. We don't know who made it, we don't know when exactly or why, but she was found near Willendorf. So she's the woman of Willendorf. Why aren't we calling her Venus? Great question. It's problematic to call her Venus because Venus is technically the name of the ancient Roman goddess of love and sex. And while this figure has very voluptuous curves, big breasts, a pubis, this belly, to associate her with Venus is extremely incorrect and very misleading because she's not a Roman goddess. She's made way before the Romans are even there. To even assume that she's a goddess is incorrect. To assume that she is some kind of fertility goddess is making assumptions on her. So we don't want to say that. Venus, It is a very common nickname, but one that we need to understand can be very misleading because we don't have the proper context. Okay. Well, what can we do? We can look at the evidence here. Here's another view of her from the side. You can see how the artist created these really small little arms here, these heavy breasts, those wide hips and buttocks. Here, this is a 360-degree view of her. And we can see that the artist has paid attention to modifying some of the shape of the natural form of the rock, and the emphasis on her breasts, on her belly, on her thighs, the lack of naturalism or accuracy to the shape of her arms. We don't see any wrists or fingers. There's no face, right? So this probably isn't a specific portrait of a woman, or if it is, it's not what we consider a portrait of a woman. She's not the only one that we've found either. We've found several of these large-bodied female figures. This is called the Venus of Holyfels because she was found at the site of Holyfels. And again, we see no facial features. We have an emphasis of the female organs of breast and pubis. And here, look at this one. This is just a different view of her. We have an identification of body parts, but not accuracy of those body parts. Here's another one that was found. This is called the head of a woman. This one does have strikingly a better sense of eyes and nose features, but she also does share with the woman of Willendorf a texture over the head. So keeping these things in mind, we can understand that humans during the Paleolithic period were creating these images in stone and in bone for some kind of expression. Now, the Venus of Willendorf is small enough to fit into the palm of your hand. She's only about 4.5 inches high, and I have the pleasure to share with you a 3D model that one of my fabulous former students made for me. Here she is. Look at her. And this is to scale. I know. My student, if you guys, well, I mean, until we don't need 3D printers to print out those PPE masks, this is something that you can do. You can find these accurate scans of artworks and then print them out and then give them to me. So here we go. Isn't she lovely? Look how small she is, 4.5 inches. And you can see that texture. You see the attention to the arm, but lack of real anatomy. But the heavy emphasis of her breasts, her belly button, her pubis, her legs. Okay. Now, in terms of scale, at 4.5 inches, she fits very nicely into the palm of your hand. In fact, the curves fit nicely. They nestle into the corners or the bends of your fingertips. So, using this context of a human holding this figure, archaeologists and scholars have assumed that maybe she is some kind of a good luck charm or an amulet. She's small and portable. She can be held in your hand, which creates this very intimate connection with her. Perhaps these were personal items for specific people. Now, I told you she never had feet. That's important because of how small she is and because she can't stand up on her own, right? You see that? If I were to stand her up, what would happen to her? She'd fall over. So because she's small and because she doesn't have any way of standing up on her own, scholars have assumed that she most likely wasn't made for some kind of larger audience worship. It wasn't easy to see her from afar. and she couldn't have been stood up and then worshipped from afar. She's meant to be close. She's meant to be intimate. And with that consideration of its intimacy, the artist perhaps is discussing elements of the female form. I'm not trying to say this is porno. No, this is not some kind of erotic art. Let's think about her in terms of her size. She's very full-bodied. Is this full body something that comes with eating a lot of food or a little bit of food? A lot of food. Okay. So the valleys, the mountains, the plains, the places where the people live have to be able to provide enough food. Perhaps, scholars have suggested, this is an expression of the fertility of the land, the abundance of nature to provide to humans. This is a time in which human beings are living in a very minimal world of life or death. There's no antibiotics, so bacterial infections can easily kill you. The rate of survival for birth was 50-50. 50-50 chance that either the child or the mother would die during childbirth. This is insane. So maybe this is a reflection of the fertility of the land. Maybe this is a reflection of the fertility of the people. Because if you don't have enough people in your village to find enough food, then you might all die. Perhaps this is a hope for fertility. People then, just as they do today, struggle with infertility. Perhaps the swelling of her breasts and the swelling of her belly is meant as a hope for pregnancy, a hope for abundance. These types of suggestions are what archaeologists and scholars refer to as a fetish figure. Now, I don't want you to think, ooh, fetish, ooh, sexy time. No. Fetish figure is meaning of placing some idea into another object. So an object believed to have magical powers, especially one capable of bringing fruition its owner's plans. This figure, the Venus of Willendorf, the woman of Willendorf, can be defined as a fetish figure. I want to pause and call attention to the fact that I've given you a vocab term and a definition. As I introduce these types of words to you that I think will be key or important to understanding the art, and I want to see you start using them, I'm going to include the term and the definition. So pause, write it down, because I might put this on exams. So we got our fetish figure. Now, archaeologists have suggested perhaps the texture of her hair, her head. Maybe that is hair. Maybe it's braids. Maybe it's curls. What we don't have from the Paleolithic are any evidence of textiles, of woven things. That doesn't mean it never existed. It's just that we don't have any evidence. Perhaps this is some kind of a woven head piece, a mask. Maybe the way that it's pulled over her eyes is because this is part of some kind of a ceremonial element to hide the individual and bring about some larger abstract idea of a god or a goddess. Ooh. These are all educated guesses. And this is what we can assume based on the evidence. But we need to understand that we're making very big, large assumptions. Perhaps this was held while someone was pregnant or in childbirth. There is evidence on the original of red paint. The red paint, is that blood? Is that the blood of life, of death? So here is our first artwork, the beautiful woman of Willendorf.